Hello everybody, and welcome to part 2. So as you remember from literally less than 30 seconds ago, I was talking about this book, and so I went on a whole thing about evolution, which is really not the original purpose of this video, but okay. So the main thing I'm getting out of this book that I'm really enjoying, and I'm really has really had an effect on me so far, is particularly there's this one chapter in the book called, let's see here, it's chapter 12, Monism versus Dualism. And I think to a certain extent, that really is the ichor, the essence, I think, of this book, of what this book is saying, and really the revolutionary thing about this book that's really so mind-blowing. And you'll see, I'll get to it. The book talks about, well, okay, let's first, there's something I want to bring up, and that's related to this. I have always been the kind of a person who, I've always viewed God as being, ow! Sorry, my cat, stop it! That hurt! Go away! Go play with your toy or something. Oh, he like dug his nails right in my foot. I'm wearing socks, so, God, that hurt. Little Freddy Cat Krueger. Little Freddy, little Kitty Krueger. Anyway, I love him, but he's a butthead. You're a little butthead. Hi, butthead. Want to say hi to the butthead? Say, hi, butthead. Anyway. Why does he have to put his cat in this video? Say you don't like it, go to another channel. I don't watch these videos to see his cat. Well, fuck you. Then don't watch them. Right. So what I wanted to talk about was that, I've always had this view of God as being separate, as being something or someone up there, detached, not foreign and not incapable of reaching communication with, but still someone or something that's fundamentally not the same as everything else. That he is, or it, whatever, is in some way, functionally or by essence, separate from everything else. I've always sort of seen God, you could sort of call this the up there view of God. Then there's this other view of God, which is, which being such a big fan and a Talmud of Hasidus, and indeed I consider myself a neo-Breslover Chassid, and that actually ties in too with some of this, but you'll see, we'll get there. Baby steps. There's people that have a here and now view of God. And these are not intellectual. I'm not talking about intellectual perceptions. I'm talking about psychologically and emotionally. That some people naturally relate to God in a way that they can just feel his presence everywhere. That there's just something about them that they relate to God as if he were right here with them, and it's just their natural affinity. That's just how they are. Then there's people like me who view God as something more away, something different, something separate, something that needs to be reached, to be contacted, something that needs, there's got to be some way for it to come together with it. And it does not just come naturally to people like me. That sort of notion. Again, which is really interesting because I'm such a big Talmud of Hasidus and a big lover of Hasidic philosophy, and so much of Hasidic philosophy is about the immanence of God, the idea that Hashem, the very essence of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidic Judaism's, the very essence of his whole worldview was that God is everywhere, and present in all things at all times, always. So it's kind of interesting that you would think then that I would have the more, like, oh, God's right here with me, sort of, mentality, since I love Hasidus so much. But interestingly enough, I know sometimes I talk too fast and I garble my words together and I turn a whole sentence that could be like, and then I went out onto the meadows with her, and I could turn to, and then I went to the bells, whatever. So I know I gotta sometimes work on. I know I talk too fast. Well, interestingly enough, I think that that's the reason that I became so, and I am still, so in love and enthralled with Hasidic philosophy, is precisely because I'm not that kind of a believer. Because I don't naturally relate to God. I don't naturally relate to God in the sense of his immanence as if I naturally feel or easily can come to a feeling that I'm close to him or that he's right here with me. I view God as more of an away and a separate thing that needs to be found and reached, so to speak. And so it's because of that the Hasidus appeals to me, because I want God to be immanent. I want to have a real emotional, probably the very essence of my entire spirituality, my entire life, has always been, more than anything else, at the end of everything, out of all the debates, and, I'm part of the community, and I love the ritual, and faith gives me comfort and courage, and inspires me to have resilience, and all of these things. But at the end of the day, the very essence, the very main ikar of everything, the foundation stone, is that I want to have a real relationship with God. I want God to exist in my life and be as real to me and have as strong a connection with him as I do with anything else, as I do with my parents, my family, my friends, my kitty cat. So being the Hasidus is this philosophy that touts that. My hope, I think, even though I didn't actually say this, I didn't spell it out this way, but it was always in there in my heart. I'm just now able to finally kind of put it into words. Is that I turned to Hasidus because I thought Hasidus would do that for me. I thought it would help me to get to that place, to that sort of a relationship with God. Now, the interesting thing within Hasidus is specifically Breslov Hasidus is very, very unique. And now, unless you've read the book by Rabbi Arthur Green, who I'm not going to dwell too much on this at all, because I just don't have the interest or the energy even to care that much. But I do want to just mention really quick something about Rabbi Arthur Green. Rabbi Arthur Green was accused of being sexually inappropriate with some of his students. Not in an abusive way. Like, he didn't abuse children. He didn't do any, it wasn't like that. I don't think anything criminal happened. But he was a little bit too cozy, I think, with some of his students, that they've called him out on it. And to his credit, he came out and he said, yes, that happened. That did happen, and it wasn't my best judgment, and I need to do tshuva for it. That's all you have to do. Like, that doesn't mean, oh, well, then all is magically forgiven. Of course not, but that shows that he really does have remorse, and that he is a person of integrity, and he is a person worth respecting. Because he didn't, try to come up with a bunch of excuses or reasons. He just said, hey, yeah, I did that. I'm sorry. It was wrong. Now, I could be angry and be like, well, I'm never going to learn anything from him ever again. And nope, I'm just going to lock myself off forever from his material. And, well, considering that since I consider him to be one of my spiritual teachers, and somebody I admire greatly, and has influenced my thoughts and way of understanding religion and philosophy and history and all that stuff, I'm not, it's kind of hard to just forget him. And, so yeah, basically what I'm saying is I stand with Rabbi Green. I support him because he did tshuva. He admitted he was wrong. He took responsibility. He said, I did bad. And I asked forgiveness from God and from man, and I'm going to try better now in the future. How can I, if I'm not to forgive him, then I'm to say that I am above God. Because God would forgive him. God has, I don't know if God forgave him. I don't know God's inner workings of God's mind, obviously. I'm not God's personal secretary, but God says if we screw up and we come to him in remorse and we admit what we did wrong and we say we're sorry with true regret, he will forgive us. So I like to believe, that God's forgiven Rabbi Green. Rabbi Green made a mistake. He did something wrong, but he did tshuva and he turned himself around. And you gotta respect that. You gotta give, like I always say, you gotta give credit where credit is due. Like with Trump. I don't like Trump. I'm not a MAGA person. I'm not a Trump type person. I hated Trump in his first term. I absolutely despised him. But look at so many of the things he's done. He's done so many good things. Not that he's the greatest person ever and we should all just bend over, and just, I'm not saying we should all bend over and kiss his ass. I'm just saying that, we gotta give credit where credit's due, So, but now, so now what I want to get into with, talking about with Rabbi Green's book, got way off track there, but Rabbi Green's book is, it was called The Tormented Master, and it's a psychological, study, of Rabbi Nachman. And its main focus is that Rabbi Nachman's spirituality was based around, interestingly enough, because the Baal Shem Tov's spirituality was so much based on God's immanence and feeling that God's there with us and feeling God's presence everywhere. And Rabbi Nachman was actually just the opposite of that. he felt a profound sense of God's lacking, of not that God lacked. God lacks nothing, of course, but that Rabbi Nachman was lacking God in his life. Of course, he was a religious Jew. He was the great grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. His I want to say great grandmother. Yeah, his great grandmother was the Baal Shem Tov's holy daughter. May her soul rest in peace, holy tzaddikus. And so you would think like that he would have a natural disposition, if anything, like his grandfather, right? You would think so, but no, the opposite. He did not feel God's presence in his life, and it bothered the hell out of him. And all he wanted was to have a connection with God, and on that level. And so he went through so many spiritual and physical and mental and emotional trials in his life. He suffered so much. He buried a wife. He buried children. When he died, his death was horribly painful. He died from tuberculosis. His lungs basically just like shut down. He was vomiting up blood. His whole body was racked with pain. He couldn't breathe. He went through some shit, But through it all, he pursued God, and eventually he became victorious because he did achieve that. He eventually, basically Rabbi Nachman was a seeker, and eventually he obtained the object of his seeking. He gained a relationship with God, a very powerful relationship with God, and a very unique relationship with God, which he has passed down in his teachings to us to emulate, which he only did for us. Rabbi Nachman didn't do any of that for himself. Rabbi Nachman struggled and went through all that to get close to God, not because he wanted to stand and bask in the light of God's, glory by himself. No, he wanted to do it so that he could help bring other Jews close to God as well. He wanted to get close to God so that he could then bring other Jews with him and bring them close to God as well. That was the entire point of his existence. He testified personally. He said himself in his own words, "I have no personal business in this world. I am not here," he was not here to settle his affairs. He was not here to make money. He was not here to gain any sort of anything. He only came into this world, he said, solely for the purpose of bringing the Jewish people, the hearts of the Jewish people, back to their Father in heaven. His entire purpose in life was to get close to God so that he could then go and bring us close to God with him as well. That was the whole thing of Rabbi Nachman. And that is what appeals so much to me about Rabbi Nachman, because I too am a seeker, and I too want to get close to God, but I don't feel close to him. I feel the distance. And the beauty of Rabbi Nachman's teachings is that he's helped me to bridge that gap, to shorten that distance, and to connect with God in a very real, raw, organic, visceral, breathing, living way, like I've always wanted. At the essence of everything at the end of the day, after everything else is said and done, that was always the main thing. And I think that probably is what attracts me so much to Rabbi Nachman's teachings. Now, what does this have to do with the book? It's all related, you'll see. So, what this has to do with that is that I therefore am always looking for opportunities I'm always looking for opportunities to bring God into my life more. There's a big difference between having a relationship with somebody that you talk to, let's say, once every other week on the phone, versus somebody you talk to once every other day or even every day on the phone, right? And so at this point, I sort of feel in my life that I have the first kind of a connection with God. We connect every once in a while. Not that I'm not saying I don't pray all the time, I do. But I'm saying I never really feel that like closeness, except for once in a blue moon. And I want to feel it more, as much as possible. So I read stuff like this, which I feel will inspire me and open up the channels and maybe give me a little more ideas and insight and open up my eyes more to be able to see God more and to find God more in everything. In fact, there's a book that I got in Israel. I don't have it anymore because I gave it to a friend and I never got back, but that's fine. And it talks about the 7 pillars of Breslov Hasidus, the 7 things that are like the core main things of being a Breslover, or neo-Breslover, which is the term I use, which is the term I learned from Rabbi Green. And the number one, the very first one, and the foundation of what all the other 6 rest upon, is that Rabbi Nachman was all about looking for God everywhere. At the end of the day, our main mission is to find God in all things. And so, in light of that, which you see lines up with the fact of him being a seeker, like Rabbi Green talks about in his psychological analysis, his psychiatric biographical study, titled The Tormented Master, that we see from there that Rabbi Nachman, Rabbeinu Zal was a seeker. And then we see in this booklet that was published by the Breslov Research Institute, it says the very first principle of the 7 main principles of Breslov Hasidus is that it's ultimately all about finding God everywhere. So you're now seeing how this all ties in, right? With the Baal Shem Tov and with everything. Is that this concept of finding God everywhere has strands in all of these different areas that ultimately come to this same conclusion, the same foundation, that life is about finding God in all things. Even a Chabad, whose philosophy they say, we're not trying to get to heaven, we're trying to get heaven to come down to earth, which, good luck, okay? But even with that, even that sort of agrees with Rabbi Nachman. What do you mean? That's the ultimate of immanence. Rabbi Nachman's thing seems to be a model of God, seems to be of one of seeking and transcendence. How could I say they're the same thing? Because when you look for God in all things, you also bring heaven down to earth. By the very action, by the very motivation of trying to find God in all things, you bring God into the world. Not that God's not already here, but the more that you look for him, the more that you realize that he's actually not hiding. He's actually, well, he is hiding, but he's hiding in plain sight, you know? And so again, at the end of the day, all of this has to do with reconnecting with God. And even the Lubavitch, even the Chabad philosophy, which is, well, we're trying to bring heaven down to earth. Well, how do you think you do that? By bringing the very essence of heaven to earth. Or rather, showing how it already is here in the first place. As Rabbi Nachman does. As Rabbeinu Zal tells us to look for everything. To look for God in everything. So, you want to bring heaven down to earth, but when you're on earth and you look for God in everything on earth, that makes the world better and more heavenly. Ergo, that brings heaven down to earth. There you go. See how that works? See how that works? So, so that's why I'm always interested in anything that I can find that could help me to find God more in all areas of my life. That being said, I am now going to end this section and do the third part. There may be a fourth part, or the third may be the end, we'll see. Where I'm going to talk about one of the main things I got out of this book. I started talking about it a little bit, but I'm going to do a little more in depth. That'll be part 3. So, see you guys in a little bit.